Three cold-hearted children decided to throw their own parents away like garbage. They left Rose and Anthony on a lonely road, in the burning heat, with nothing but the clothes on their backs. "You're a burden we can't take anymore," they said. Then they drove away in their black Mercedes and never looked back. But those three ungrateful children had no idea what they had just thrown away. Hello friends. Welcome to our story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? New York? Canada? Maybe South Africa or Jamaica? We want to know. Rose woke up that morning with a heaviness in her chest. Not the kind that comes from sickness. After 70 years of living, she knew the difference between a body that was hurting and a soul that was hurting. This was the second kind. It was the feeling you get when you slowly realize that the place you call home no longer wants you in it. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but it was not a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of quiet that sits on top of things left unsaid, heavy, pressing down, waiting. Beside her, Anthony was still sleeping. His breathing was slow and a little rough, the way it had been ever since his heart started giving him trouble. She turned her head and looked at him. At his white hair. At the deep lines on his face. Lines that told the whole story of his life if you knew how to read them. There were lines from laughter and lines from worry. Lines from years of hard work and early mornings. Lines from the sleepless nights when the children were small and sick and needed someone to hold them. She reached out and touched his gray hair very gently so she wouldn't wake him. "How did we get here, my love?" she whispered. He didn't hear her. He kept breathing, slow and rough, in and out. Rose got up. Every movement was its own small battle. Her knees. Her back. Her hands stiff in the cold morning air. She moved slowly through the bedroom, past the old wedding photo on the wall, the two of them young and bright-eyed, smiling like the whole world was a gift, and out into the hallway. In the kitchen she did what she had done every morning for 50 years. She cooked. She didn't cook because anyone had asked her to. She cooked because it was the only language she had left that still felt like love. She cracked 3 eggs into the pan, carefully because eggs were not cheap, and put bread in the toaster and put water on to boil for tea. 3 eggs. For people. She was already calculating. She would give Anthony 2. He needed the strength. She would take half of one herself. That would be enough. She was still standing at the stove when Sandra appeared in the kitchen doorway. Sandra was 42 years old and worked as an accountant. She was still in her robe, her hair not yet done, but her expression was already fully awake, sharp and cold and ready to find fault with something. She looked at the pan. She looked at the 3 eggs. "Mom," she said, and her voice had that tone, the tone Rose had been hearing more and more these days, the tone that made her feel like a child being corrected. "Those eggs again? Do you have any idea how much we spend on food in this house?" Rose kept her eyes on the pan. "I thought you'd want something before work," she said quietly. "I eat on the street. It's cheaper." Sandra walked to the counter and picked up a stack of papers. Medical bills Rose could see, held together with a rubber band. She dropped them on the kitchen table with a hard, flat smack. "These came yesterday. Dad's prescriptions. Again." Rose did not look at the papers. She already knew what was in them. She turned the eggs over carefully. 3 eggs, Mom." Sandra's voice was getting sharper. 3 eggs and you're standing there like you're feeding a restaurant. Every single day it's something. The electricity. The water. The medication. The food. She pulled her robe tighter around herself and shook her head. "I'm exhausted. We're all exhausted." Rose slid the eggs onto a plate. Her hands were steady. She had learned, over many years, to keep her hands steady even when everything inside her was trembling. "Sit down," she said softly. "Eat something. I told you I eat on the—" "Sandra." Rose turned and looked at her daughter. Just for a moment. Just long enough to let the moment be what it was. "Sit down and eat something. Please." Sandra looked at her mother's face. Something flickered across her own, something that might have been guilt or might have been irritation. It was hard to tell with Sandra these days. She sat down. She pulled the plate toward her. She ate without saying thank you, her eyes on her phone, her fingers scrolling through something that was apparently more interesting than the woman who had raised her. Rose made Anthony's plate and carried it to the bedroom. He was awake now, sitting up slowly, reaching automatically for his pills on the bedside table. Rose set the plate in front of him and sat on the edge of the bed. She watched him take his pill. She watched him look down at the 2 eggs and the toast and the small cup of tea. He looked up at her. He had known her for 50 years. He could read her face better than he could read any book. "What did she say?" he asked. "Nothing important," said Rose. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked down at his plate. He picked up his fork. "Rose," he said quietly. "Eat," she said. "While it's hot." He ate. She sat beside him. And outside the bedroom door, the house moved around them, Sandra's heels clicking on the floor, the television turning on in the living room where Benjamin was already awake and already doing nothing, the sound of Robert's car pulling into the driveway even though he had his own apartment across town and no particular reason to be here this early. No particular reason except the one Rose was beginning to understand. Something was coming. She could feel it the same way she could feel rain before it arrived. A pressure in the air, a stillness that was not peaceful but waiting. She folded her hands in her lap and said nothing. And Anthony ate his eggs and pretended he wasn't listening to the voices gathering outside the door. Robert didn't knock. He never knocked anymore. This was the thing Rose had noticed, the slow disappearance of small courtesies. First it was the knocking. Then it was the good mornings. Then it was asking before taking things from the refrigerator, before changing the television channel, before making decisions about a house that was not theirs. He walked straight into the bedroom where Rose was sitting with Anthony, still holding his fork, and Robert stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets and looked at them both with an expression that Rose could not quite name. Not unkind exactly, but not kind either. Something in between. Something worse than either. "We need to talk," he said. "All of us. In the living room." Anthony set his fork down. "I'm eating. It won't take long." Rose put her hand on Anthony's arm. A small touch. A signal that passed between them in half a second. "Let's just go, it's easier, don't fight it." He understood. He always understood. He set his plate on the bedside table, half the food still on it, and reached for his walking stick. The living room felt different with all five of them in it. Or maybe it had always felt this way and Rose was only now seeing it clearly. Robert stood near the window. Sandra had moved from the kitchen table to the armchair, her pile of papers now on her lap. Benjamin was on the sofa, still in his pajamas, and he had the particular look of someone who already knows what is about to be said and has already decided how he feels about it. Rose and Anthony sat together on the smaller sofa against the wall. The one that used to be in the center of the room, before Robert had rearranged the furniture one weekend without asking. "Okay," Robert said. He cleared his throat. "So, we've all been talking." "When?" Anthony asked. Robert paused. "Sorry? When did you all talk?" His voice was calm. "Because I didn't hear any of this talking." A look passed between the three siblings. Quick and small and almost invisible. But Rose caught it. She had spent 50 years watching people's faces. She caught everything. "We've been discussing it for a while," Sandra said smoothly. "Among ourselves. Because we didn't want to worry you until we had a plan." "A plan?" Anthony repeated. "Yes." He nodded slowly the way he did when he was keeping himself very, very calm. "What kind of plan?" Rose asked. Sandra opened her folder. Of course she had a folder. Sandra always had a folder. Rose thought, not for the first time, that her middle child had been born with a folder already in her hands. "I've been going through the household numbers," Sandra began. "And I want to be honest with you both because I think honesty is important." Honesty, Rose thought. Yes, let's talk about honesty. The situation is not sustainable. Dad's medication alone is $200 a month. The electricity bill has gone up because of the heater. The grocery bill is significantly higher than it should be for a house this size. And the maintenance. "I built this house," Anthony said. "Dad. With my hands." He held them up. The big, rough, trembling hands. These hands. 3 years. Every weekend. "I know that," Robert said. "And no one is taking that away from you. But things are different now. We have our own expenses. Our own lives. And the honest reality is..." He paused. And in that pause, Rose heard everything that was coming. She heard it the way you hear thunder before the lightning, not the thing itself but the warning of it rolling toward you across the sky. "We found a place," Robert finished. "A care facility. Not far from here. Clean, professional staff, other people your age. You'd have your own room, your meals taken care of, medical support on site for Dad's condition." "A nursing home," Anthony said. "A care facility. A nursing home." His voice was very quiet now. "Say what it is, Robert." The room went still. Benjamin looked at the floor. Sandra looked at her papers. Robert looked at his father, and for just a moment, just one small flicker, something moved across his face that might have been shame. Then it was gone. "It's the best option," he said. "For everyone." Rose did not cry. She had promised herself a long time ago that she would not cry in front of them. Not because she was too proud, but because she understood instinctively that her tears would not soften them. Some people are moved by tears. These three she now understood were not. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and she looked at her children, really looked at them one by one, and she tried to find in their faces the small children she had carried and fed and stayed up with through the night, and loved with everything she had. She could find pieces of them. Robert's jaw was the same as it had been at 10 years old. Sandra had her grandmother's eyes. Benjamin, even now, even like this, had a softness around his mouth that he had been born with. But the children themselves, the ones she had known, seemed to have gone somewhere. Replaced, gradually and without her noticing, by these three strangers who looked at her and saw only a number on a page. When? She asked. Robert looked almost